it might not land as sympathetically as it might have perhaps in a more prosperous time. There might be people thinking, there are pensioners here who can't turn on their heating.
Yeah, I would love to hear your opinion on the portrayal of the whole royal family in The Crown, because a lot of what you just discussed, we saw portrayed in The Crown
Yeah.
in either factual or, stretched, stretched truth sort of ways.
Yeah.
I'd love to know what you think about the show and about the disclaimers that have become such a hot topic lately.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really one of those people who tends to get too antsy about historical accuracies in dramas. That's what nonfiction books are for. You go to one restaurant for a good pizza, you go to another one for a good steak, kind of thing. But that being said, I'm also someone who has a slight moral twinge at dramas about people who are still alive, and particularly about very intensely painful things. I felt the same way about, The Iron Lady and Bombshell and Hunger. It's just not necessarily my personal. It's not something I can sit with a great deal of enjoyment all the time. And that being said, I think season 1 and season 2 of The Crown might have been some of the best television ever made. I'm sort of contradicting myself. I mean, it was really absolutely extraordinary stuff. But I suppose that they had the advantage of that being quite far back in time, and it becomes harder to research as you get to the 80s and 90s. Not in the same way The Crown is often stressing there is a hierarchy of importance within the royal family for individuals. There is a hierarchy of kindness that The Crown has shown to different members of the royal family. They are not all treated equally. So, for instance, you have on the one hand a very, very sympathetic portrayal of Princess Margaret, running, I would argue, right the way through to season 4, and probably the Queen Mother being the least sympathetically portrayed. My bigger issue with The Crown, if I'm absolutely honest, is actually not how it portrays members of the royal family. I think sometimes the way it portrays certain people who are just caught in the royal, the characters like the equerry who died in the skiing accident that Prince Charles survived. The family requested they didn't show the funeral, and they did. I still don't understand why on earth in the Aberfan episode they chose to show the moment the coal avalanche hit the primary school, and you actually heard the children screaming as it. I mean, there are things that you just think those are not necessary, and those are real people, and no one's entertainment is going to be less by you choosing not to include that. So actually, my gripe with it isn't the royal family; it's sometimes what it does to other people who just are being dramatized in those stories. It is an incredibly well acted show. I think The Crown doesn't always get credit for dramatizing some really interesting parts of royal history that didn't get attention before. I think it has given us some of the most extraordinary performances. I mean, Claire Foy, Vanessa Kirby, Victoria Hamilton I thought was brilliant as the Queen Mother. But part of the difficulty for The Crown, I would say, is that it has marketed it's sort of dug a little bit of a ditch for itself a bit, which is that part of The Crown's early marketing was on the strength of its research, and that it was a higher standard of fictionalization, that it was impeccably well researched. They recreate with such detail all the costumes and the places. The problem with marketing it that way is that when you start to make very artistic decisions, you're being held up by a standard you set for yourself in the earlier seasons. So that's sort of where I think The Crown is maybe getting a little bit of pushback. But what I would say is every new cast and every new iteration deserves a chance, and we'll wait and see what season 5 is like. It's not fair for people really to be criticizing the actors, etc., until we've seen it.
Yeah, it's going to be a must-watch, definitely.
Absolutely.
And then before we wrap up, I have to get your take on Spare. Obviously, Prince Harry just announced the book will be coming out. I mean, in your opinion, do you think he's going to hold anything back? And how is this going to shake up the royal family once again?
Yeah, I don't know. It could be really interesting because part of the difficulty for not just Prince Harry, but anyone writing a memoir from a position of wealth and privilege, is that this is going to be coming out, particularly in Britain, at the middle of a cost of living crisis and what could be a very tough winter. So it might not land as sympathetically as it might have perhaps in a more prosperous time. There might be people thinking, there are pensioners here who can't turn on their heating. So there are comparisons of what suffering and grief is. Obviously, if you're born into great privilege, it just is different than if you're someone who, as we said, are struggling to meet their bills. So I don't know how the book is going to be received. I think he's someone who very much wants to get this off his chest. There have been memoirs like this before. His mother's, that we now know, she essentially helped Andrew. Well, she gave all the information to Andrew Morton. His father gave a lot of information to Jonathan Dimbleby when he wrote his biography of it. I get the sense, I could be wrong, I get the sense the Sussexes are hoping for a year of reconciliation, and I think they were hoping. I think they were hoping that 2023 would be a smoother year with them sort of building bridges with the royal family. But the problem is, once something is out, it's very hard to take it back in. So that could be. I have heard, we've all heard, that there's been an attempt to tone down some of the stuff in the memoir. That being said, I think he has wanted to do this for a long time. This is someone who. And not, by the way, to take away from Prince William, 15 is a very traumatic age to lose your mother. Of course it is. But Prince Harry was at a very, very difficult, painful age to lose his mother. And he really, not unfairly, blames the media and feels that a lot of the lessons that should have been learned at the time of his mother's death have not been learned. And that he was not in a position where he could, openly grieve or openly remonstrate against that. So I think there certainly will be some shots fired at the monarchy, but I would say that the media and the press are really going to be taken to task by Prince Harry with this. And if you're going to ask me, do I think someone who lost their mother in those circumstances has the right to say that? Then yeah, absolutely. But we'll see what the tone is. I think that they've kept it very much under wraps, and who knows what the book will actually say.
Going to be a must read, much like your book is. So everyone go out and get it. Let's have another drink, Gareth. It is always so much fun catching up with you. We'd love having you on.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for having me. You too.
For more news, content, and exclusive interviews, make sure to hit the sub, like, and bell button down below and visit usmagazine.com.